Ask about Illuminati. Says the chart in the Yuppie Ducks. Is it Disney mind control? Is this MK Ultra Deluxe? Occult Disney. Go wish upon a star. Occult Disney. Chernobyl to Jafar. Occult Disney. Pineal gland Pinocchio. Occult Disney. As above, so below. Occult Disney. Please enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome to the Occult Disney podcast, where we tear down the roads of rural America to discover the secrets behind the mouse. I'm going to make it increasingly incoherent. I want people to think about what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Hi, this is
I was
Matt.
wondering how you were going to lead this one because there's so many routes you could have taken.
That's right. Well, the charm to it all is I make sure not to think about what I'm going to say until I say it, you know?
It is charming.
That's how we work it out. This is Matt here. Over there's Thomas. How is it?
It's paranoid.
We got short sleeves on. I looked at Google Maps. It looks like Orlando is like 18 degrees, which is what, like 60 or something?
Yeah, although with enough computers running in one room, it elevates it at least another 15 degrees.
Okay, I'm freezing Menards off around here. I got a
This is the one time a year that I can really be happy about living in Florida. Middle of summer, not so much. Hell, I mean, the last 5 months of hurricane warnings, not so much. I think hurricane season is officially over. Hooray. Although the last big one that actually did damage to me did happen like in a week from now. Like relatively, it happened, 2 weeks into December. So we're never really out of the clear.
Yeah. Living in Japan is funny. Sometimes there's like a earthquake on the other side of the country and people are like, are you okay? I'm like, dude, that's like 500 miles away, Or
I know. Are you okay?
But they actually, there's just a California earthquake, and I got a well-intentioned, nice message being like, "Oh, are you okay? Tsunamis, right?" I'm like, I live in the mountains. It's got to be like 2012 level tsunamis to get me.
That would be exciting to actually see a tsunami in the mountains, though.
I've seen them in my dreams, man. That was literally, I had a dream where that happened, and it was actually pretty cool looking.
Did you
once
die?
It was snow, once it was water. Probably. Or woke up or whatever. I know at least one of them was quite lucid, so I was like, "Hey, that's cool," So it didn't really matter if I died in that case, did it?
Are you at the level of lucid dreaming where you can do weather manipulation in your dreams?
Nah, I don't have them that often. Honestly, I think a really good vivid dream is better than a lucid dream, personally, because I want to be taken along on the narrative and a ride, because the last time I had a lucid dream, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do now? I mean, maybe I'm just not creative enough. I'm sure Tibetan mystics know what to do, but I was just like, okay.
It's crazy that it takes a lot of work and practice to do the lucid dreaming, and then even the people that I know that have refined it to where they can almost intentionally do it whenever they want. It's a taxing process.
It takes a lot of work.
it takes a lot of work, but it just leaves you exhausted, like physically and mentally exhausted at the end of it. I don't know what it is about lucid dreaming that would do that to someone, but it seems, subjectively, in my anecdotal small group of friends that are pretty hardcore lucid dreamers, they all report that exact same thing. Like they would do it every night if they could. Except, no one has that kind of stamina, apparently, except for maybe some monks that are out in your neck of the woods.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point of doing that, isn't it? That you've disciplined yourself that much. I don't know if that has anything to do with today's movie, though, although I will talk about it all day. But yeah, today's movie is Cars. It's a pretty biggie for the Disney scene, especially the Pixar scene. This is the end of the original run of Disney Pixar. So this movie's success gave Pixar the card they needed for Disney and be like, we will pay whatever to keep you here. Because Disney had just put out what? Into the Wild, or The Wild, excuse me, The Wild and Chicken Little. So they were kind of eating poop at this point, as far as blockbusters were concerned. Cars, massive one. I think this is Pixar's biggest hit. It might be.
Really?
And maybe, I mean, Inside Out 2 is probably knocked it out. But if you consider inflation, I don't know. But yeah, runaway success. Today I have slightly older kids, but tomorrow I will be teaching a lot of little ones, and I would bet money that at least one of them is dressed in Lightning McQueen stuff, you know?
Real? Okay, so that big. In Japan, there's people wearing Lightning McQueen stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Disney's pretty big in Japan, but a lot of it's iconography. Although I think most of these little boys have watched Cars. Like I said, when I had my Tigger costume, the kids would recognize it. They didn't know that the character's name was Tigger and that it was Pooh's friend, because they hadn't actually seen any media with Pooh. So they didn't know that. But I think the Japanese, I think
that's German children's television that has lots of media with Pooh.
Yeah. Dark internet videos. But it's traction is here in Japan. We don't have a ride or anything, but Tokyo Disney maybe doesn't have space for a ride. They just open a new area, and it's all like classics. Well, actually, one's Tangled. I guess that's not so classic. Frozen, that's not so classic. Peter Pan, they did a new Peter Pan ride, different than the one at actual Disneyland.
I gotta admit, I wouldn't have even noticed the Cars ride if there. I would assume that there's got to be one in Orlando in Walt Disney World. They got enough real estate, and if it's as big of a hitter, there's obviously themes around the park, but I just can't remember the ride. But I also want to say that every single time this movie came up, and I think this is the biggest one that was in production and in theaters when I was working at Disney, like when I was fully, full time doing animation and interactive stuff, and my whole like full blown role there. This was the Big Daddy that first kind of came in, although we didn't work on it because it was Pixar. I didn't work at Pixar, but we got all the ancillary stuff, all the little mobile game apps and the in-park sort of advertisement and interactives and stuff. That was all the things that we were working day in and day out. And I think that most of the marketing material that came through my particular desk was aimed at such a young demographic that until I saw it today for the very first time in its entirety, despite having worked on it for months and months in various capacities, I just never actually watched it because I assumed it was targeted at like 5-year-olds max. And I think I've dismissed it every time it came up, even in our discussions. But I will fully eat my hat or my foot or whatever I have to eat, because this might be one of my favorite Disney movies now.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah,
I was not expecting that at all. It took me by absolute surprise.
Because I saw this when it came out, and I guess the vibe at the time was it's not terrible. It's better than what Disney's doing at the time. But I think I think we felt kind of a step down from like Finding Nemo and Toy Story movies.
Maybe
a little less adult.
It's hard to compare like a random decent song from a group and then put it up against like their top 2 songs ever and be like, well, it's not as good as their greatest hits or whatever. Like it's still on it feels like this movie would still be on the greatest hits album, even if it's not the flagship track that gets promoted and gets all of the remixes and everything.
Well, it kind of is in the pop sphere. Like as far as popularity, this is the big hit, So,
and there's a lot of good reasons for so first of all, watching this when it came out, I feel that you would be comparing it and it would be relative to all the other movies that were out around that time. And I didn't do any of that background of what other movies it was kind of competing with, because I'm sure there were lots of superior movies, but the way that we're doing this and we were going, and specifically that the last movies we've saw were Wild, Chicken Little, Valiant, Who's Heffalump movie, The Incredibles, and then before that it was the Ghibli bits, and then Home on the Range, right? And Teacher's Pet. Like all of those combined sets a very low bar, so that when a decent movie kind of comes in to trail all that, it really stands out. So this one was exceptionally good relative to all the other Disney movies that have come out in the previous almost decade before this.
It's not a pill to watch or anything. It's perfectly fun to watch. So yeah, after what you mentioned, The Incredibles I like quite well, but otherwise, yeah, we've been dealing with lesser stuff. So this is kind of
This
a
one
major film.
also, and I know that this is not like a movie review series, so it doesn't matter as much what the actual movie review part is, but this one absolutely, like, visually, it holds up way better than any of the previous 3D animated movies, and I think part of that, and also the reason why it's got so many remixes and sequels and things, is because they're not trying to model any sort of organic characters. You know, like, they're anthropomorphic, but they're freaking cars that have pretty, specific shapes and stickers and all mechanical stuff. So that lends itself so much better because you don't have to worry about how skin bounces off light in certain conditions with like subsurface scattering and all these other elements that are completely different than rendering out something like a car. So it it's the perfect subject material for them to just be getting into like this really next level of 3D rendering.
Yeah, yeah. This is kind of also John Lasseter's stepping up to the plate again. I mean, I guess in 2024 he's been somewhat disgraced, but he was like the Pixar mastermind back in the day. So he did the first two Toy Stories on Bug's Life, and Cars began production after A Bug's Life. The other Pixar films were directed by other people. So this is maybe that might have been the thing. People are like, "Oh, the Pixar guru is coming and doing another film," and people are like, maybe I liked Finding Nemo a little better. But kids were totally into this. It says here it started out in 1998 as something called The Yellow Car, which was about an electric car living in a gas-guzzling world inspired by The Ugly Duckling. So
I would
that
have
would have
hated that movie so much. This movie's the antithesis of that.
yeah. Obviously it was extremely changed. Then he took a cross-country trip with his family. Working title of the film was Route 66, which makes sense, but they changed it because of the 60s TV series. They didn't want people to think it was like the film version of that.
like let's just call it Cars. That won't conflict with anything.
Yeah. Okay, here's a dumb quote from Lasseter. I've always loved cars. In one vein, I have Disney blood, and in the other, there's motor oil. So that's kind of a weird thing to say, but whatever.
I question how much of the movie that I liked came from Lasseter or came from Ramth, who was the other person that worked on this movie, which I was looking into his credit because it really did shock me how much I liked this movie compared to how much I've kind of been like crapping all over it whenever it came up previously. And I was like, why is that? What is it about this movie? And I really try and sit down and figure. And one of those is that Rand's first movie was Brave Little Toaster before he co-directed Cars, and Cars was actually his final work before he died in a car. So I feel that without knowing more insight beyond those two notes, Brave Little Toaster, and that he was essentially a human sacrifice for the success of this movie.
Yeah, it feels a little cursed, doesn't it?
Credit.
There's another guy, was it Jürgen Klubian, who it seems he had quite a bit to do, or he claims he had quite a bit to do. He said the film was both his best and most bitter experience because he was fired before it premiered, and he feels Lasseter wrote him out of the story of how the film got made. So he's still listed as a screenwriter, so it's not like they didn't give him some credit. But how many screenwriters? Oh my God, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's usually a bad sign. Although the story here is, it makes kind of sense. I told you my shtick today is just maybe I'm going to be asking lots of questions because I wrote down all the questions I had while watching this movie.
And my most annoying trait is that I love answering rhetorical questions. So this will be a match made in heaven, I think.
Okay, well, why don't we just jump right into that? I might do some more production stuff later, but I think I got the big bits out there. How do the scale of bathrooms work in this world, especially in a stadium? Who built the stadium?
Well, I don't think they need bathrooms of any kind. Like cars are efficient in that they burn up. They would have to change their oil.
Yeah, oil change. Okay. Oh, they burn up. Okay, there we go. That's a good answer. Who built the stadium?
Which they okay, great question. I assume that there are still humans inside all of these cars.
I don't.
Okay, well, I guess there's a
There's
good
humans
point of
trapped
contention.
inside behind these opaque eyes.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, who actually creates the tire? Who creates the cars? Because at one point they say, after, I mean, we'll jump around here to answer some of these, but there's this disconnection. There's this Disney proxy where McQueen gets separated from his trailer truck, and when the trailer truck finally finds him again, he's like, "Oh, thank the manufacturer." So their concept of God is the manufacturer, and I would assume that the manufacturer is just an egregore for a corporate entity, which is then staffed by people or cars. I know we talk about that Cars is like the most futuristic of all the Disney movies, right? It takes place in the future when humans don't exist anymore.
I think Monsters might be a little bit after, but yeah, it's way in
Okay.
the future, right? So maybe
So,
humans
but
originally built that stadium if you're going by that wacky Pixar timeline, which
but
I'm
maybe
perfectly
the
willing to.
reasons humans don't exist is just because the cars only understand egregores. They only recognize life in other inanimate objects, and I guess a corporation as an egregore would classify as an inanimate object in a few of those ways. Like, it's intangible, but it's also inanimate. So I don't know. Maybe it exists in one of those weird realms that humans are there, but the cars are not aware that they're around, and the humans don't know that the cars are, have consciousness in them.
Yeah, like a Toy Story times 8, maybe. Okay. So since the now keep in mind, I'm going with the cars themselves are racing. So does that make a race like this stock car race a gladiatorial death race? Because I mean, a car gets totaled, it's dead. I guess someone's in the car, they're dead too. So you could say that about human racing if you want to. But
Well, maybe if it explodes, maybe the car will be dead. But the two cars that we actually see get mangled in this movie, both of them survive it. They just, it takes them both out of the racing circuit. So I guess maybe we just saw people being maimed, or we just saw cars having massive sports injuries. But yeah, is there any like CTE? Right? Do they have like brain damage from doing any of this?
I don't know, because does McQueen feel pain because its tires come off? So he's got the sparking tire axles, right? And he doesn't. Maybe he's just like so jacked up on adrenaline he doesn't feel pain, because later he seems to feel pain when he's out in the tumbleweeds or something.
Right, no, he fall multiple times, he drives directly into a cactus patch, and there's a very audible "ow." So, clearly he does feel some sort of physical pain. Although I don't get that either, because if you were driving as fast as they drive and just a little pebble comes up, it seems like that would hurt way more than, just driving into or having a cactus fall on you from just the weight of gravity by itself.
Okay, I'll keep moving down my list. I have many questions here. What do the groupie girl cars expect to do with McQueen?
Something to do with the tailpipe.
Okay. Some tailpipe work. Well, that puts me to who applies the rusties. No one has arms. You dip a tire in the rusties and then rub the tire on the car's
Oh, I
blood.
mean, if we're getting into theory now, I assume that they could load it into a car wash and then just drive through the car wash maybe and have it applied that way.
They're already rusting though. They're like lepers, I guess. So
Well, that's the other thing too, is that if they sell Rusties, how come even the guys that are selling Rusties and all of the Rusties fans are still Rusty? Like, are they not using the product that they themselves are using to sort of bond together? Because they all look
yeah, it's kind of like
horrible.
the barber shop thing. When you go in, there's two barbers. You choose the one with you don't choose the barber with good hair. You choose the barber with bad hair because you assume they cut each other's
I
hair.
never thought of it like that. That's a great way of, yeah.
Yeah, because you want to get a free one, so you get it from your coworker. Let's see. So Lightning has no headlights. So does that technically make him disabled? Because
Well,
he's
he
screwed at night.
also may well, yeah, I guess when he's not in the track, it definitely puts him at a disadvantage. And they, in fact, the love interest, which is silly that there's a love interest in a movie about cars, but of course there is, calls them stickers because his headlights are literally just stickers. Is this a real thing? I don't know enough about stock car racing. It doesn't
I'm
seem like
gonna
that's a real thing.
yeah. But it's in the. Why else would they put it in the movie? I'm gonna have to go watch one of the Ford versus Ferrari or something again.
Yeah, maybe there have been cars where they just put stickers, although that seems like it would be done for an advantage. And if it's an advantage, why wouldn't they all just have stickers for headlights? And if they all have stickers for headlights, why don't you just take the stickers off? Like, you know what I mean? It would eventually evolve into just not having headlights.
Yeah. I guess we don't know enough about stock car racing. So hey, that's a legit question then. Okay. This question's dumb. How did Stanley found the town without arms or anything? Okay. Let's just move on past that
a
one.
lot of the questions that don't seem to have perfect answers are going to probably devolve into the manufacturer did it, or whatever
Right.
the peers of the manufacturer would be.
No, I'm just on this hard line because I've seen this movie like 5 times, and I'm like, no, the humans are dead in this world. It's just cars now. Although I do like your idea of like they just can't see. That is cool, but yeah, I've always watched this as in like it's a weird auto apocalypse, because I like apocalyptic movies. Is it ethically okay to steal gas from another car? The first time he tries to leave town, they've siphoned gas from him while he was out, you know?
Right. I mean, this is where I was starting to wonder, like, what are the actual human analogies for the various parts of, like, if your tire pops, what is that breaking a leg? So I guess, yeah, if someone siphons your gas, what exactly are they? Is that your blood? I guess usually when you're talking about cars, the oil would be the blood, but and I guess the gas would sort of be like your calories. But so
Maybe they
siphoning
pumped your
gas would
stomach.
be like if I pumped your stomach and then ate the contents and put it into my stomach because I wanted to steal your energy, which is kind of gross, right?
Well, I don't know what they did with the gas after I siphoned it, so. Did
I
they
mean,
say they
I
used it themselves?
assume sauteed it and had it with a nice glass of Chianti. Chianti.
Why is this movie 2 hours long? I've just been enjoying the 82-minute movies. Honestly, this one doesn't drag or anything. It was midnight, you know?
Oh, I see what you did there. It doesn't drag.
Oh yeah, it drifts.
And honestly, the same thing too. The second that I put the movie on, and I looked down at the time, and I was like, "Come on, 2 hours!" But it moved along. Like I didn't even speed it up, which is also a rarity for me. I don't know if I was just in a particularly good mood when watching this, or if the movie put me in a good mood, or what. But it felt like an anomaly.
See, I had to watch The Wild at normal speed because I was watching the Blu-ray. But that was 82 minutes, so I got out of it before too long.
Yeah, I still watched that one sped up, and it was still a little bit longer than it needed to be. And despite the ending just abruptly, happened.
Who hooked lightning up to Bessie, the road making machine known as arms? I'm stuck on no one having arms apparently.
Well, I got another one about Bessie. Why isn't Bessie a car? Like, if you were to go and pave a road now, you wouldn't pull it with a car. You would just drive the freaking gravel paver.
Why are the tractors all like they don't have like intelligence? I mean, yeah, they're supposed to be cows, but that doesn't make sense.
Right. Well, I mean, if you go with the human idea, they're the only cars I think that have a transparent interior so you can see the inside. And clearly they do not have humans inside them. Whereas every other car in this movie doesn't have these like transparent sort of, I guess the Jeep, maybe the Jeep throws a wrench in that.
Yeah. And then you have the little the pit stop cars, which are kind of tractor like, right? They're smaller. So
or forklifts almost.
Yeah, but it's like which kind of service vehicle is sentient and which one is not, you know?
Okay, no, I'm starting to realize that humans are completely wiped off the planet at this point.
That's how I watch the movie. When did Fast and the Furious 3 Tokyo Drift come out? Because they have a very long conversation about how to drift without saying the word drift, and then later you see him drift. So it was definitely drifting.
Where they talk about turn right to turn left. That's sort of the whole talk. Yeah. I still don't understand it. I've played the video games and stuff, and I guess the way that I understand it from video games only, I would never in a million years drive an actual car like this.
No.
Without someone teaching me how to do it very slowly. But it almost sounds like you just for a split second turn away to change your trajectory, and then you kind of like slam the wheel to the actual direction that you wanted to turn in. But I don't know if that's accurate. I don't actually know how any of this works.
All I know about drifting is what, like from Mario Kart and stuff, right?
Okay.
Although I on the Nintendo DS, I preferred Sonic Racing because to drift or power up or whatever, you really hurt your thumb on Mario Kart, where Sonic you didn't have to do that. So on that
I'm glad we're definitely car guys. That's clear.
Oh yeah, Mario Kart, yeah, right on. All into that.
Need for Speed, hell yeah, of course. Grand Theft Auto, yeah, I've driven all kinds of cars.
Wipeout, there we go. I love that one. Oh, that wasn't a car though. No, I'm thinking of a different one. There's some car game which was aggressively smashy that I liked.
Yeah, the whole premise of the entire game was to just have like incredible collisions, right?
Right. Or the ones that would give you like the battlefield to battle in or whatever. San Francisco 2049, I think, let you do that. Have a little battle out in a city or something. That was fun. It wasn't racing anymore. Now it was a vehicular homicide. Why is the Piston Cup reveal music sound like Back to the Future? I don't think Alan. No, Randy Newman did the score, so it started doing sound a little Back to the Future there.
Funny enough, I do have a Back to the Future reference.
Yeah. We're out in the desert, the third one's definitely
in the desert, and I made a note, I guess a deeper note that I'll get to later in more detail, but that essentially this movie could also have been written as a time machine movie where this future car gets teleported back to the 50s or 60s and has to find its way back to the future, which is basically Back to the Future 3.
Well, actually, ironically, the movie that this one is sometimes accused of kind of plagiarizing a little bit is another Michael J. Fox movie, Doc Hollywood. Are you familiar with Doc Hollywood?
I don't think so, man. No.
That's where I saw it like, back in the 90s or whatever, but that's where like the Hollywood doctor's his car breaks down in like a podunk town, and he does something stupid like McQueen does that makes him have to stay there. Actually, I'll look up a quick plot description. So I
absolutely need to watch this though, because I'm a huge fan of almost every Michael J. Fox movie I've ever seen, even the ones that are sort of panned. Life of Mikey.
This one's reasonably good actually. So
okay, I'm excited to see it actually.
Yeah, having completed his medical residency, Dr. Benjamin Benstone begins driving to Beverly Hills for a job interview. While passing through the small town of Grady, South Carolina, Ben crashes into a fence while trying to avoid hitting a cow. The fence belongs to the judge, who sentences him to 32 hours of community service. So,
oh my god, this is literally the movie Cars.
Yeah, like I said, it's sometimes accused of plagiarizing Doc Hollywood. I mean, this clearly isn't South Carolina, but I guess Owen Wilson doing the voice gives a bit of a Michael J. Fox vibe.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of these freaking Hollywood elite Disney millionaires, South Carolina might as well be Arkansas, might as well be Kentucky, might as well be Southern Texas.
Yeah, obviously a painted desert look is a lot nicer in the boonies of South Carolina. That's actually what I was writing about Radiator Springs. I was like, man, if you want to see a really depressing, washed up town, go, to the rural South. I assume Florida has some of those too, where you get out of the cities and you get to this old town and it's just like abandoned. Like they don't even have the neon signs or, anything suggesting a business anymore.
Yeah, I don't know what happens in Cars 2 or Cars 3. I'll be more open to them for sure, but it would be pretty wild to see one of them go through like Detroit and just all of the old graveyards from where all of their ancestors came from, which is just now boneyards.
The second one, I believe, is kind of a Europe thing, and maybe is that the spy film? I haven't seen the sequels actually. I've only seen the first one.
Europe, and you already lost me a little bit.
You just maybe throw up in my mouth a little bit. Okay.
I joke. I love all of our European listeners.
Yeah, but yeah, when it's a little depressing when he turns the lights on. I'm like, well, that is kind of Radiator Springs' last fling. They make it seem hopeful at the end of the movie still, but you're like, man, they're not getting around that expressway.
No one wants your white wall tires, dude. Nobody wants your used hubcaps. There's nothing there for anybody.
Yeah, his white walled tires are gone in the next scene because now he's got a race and he needs racing tires.
Right.
So they
If
don't last
people
long.
liked Radiator Springs that much, then they wouldn't have cut it out for a 10-minute, drive savings.
They like it in California Adventure. That's where the ride is, by the way. So there must be a car ride. There is that one, and I think there's a Luigi coaster or something, which is maybe. Anyway, they're apparently in Florida. They're ripping out the rivers of America to build a Cars ride. So that's kind of intense.
Very meta. That's kind of what they're doing on the actual rivers of America.
Yeah, they're getting rid of one of the oldest. I mean, let's face it, people usually don't go to Tom Sawyer's Island, but hey, when I was a kid, that was one of my favorite parts of the park. Somebody likes Tom Sawyer's Island.
Me too. That was absolutely used to be my favorite part of the park.
Well, now it's going to be a dirt mound in Florida, which also sounds like a bad idea. I think it's supposed to be like a drag racing thing, like where they do the drift, like that's the point of the ride or whatever. But if they're going to build a big pile of sand and the middle of Florida, that sounds like a terrible idea.
In all seriousness, though, how relatable is Tom Sawyer in 2024? I don't even know how relatable Tom Sawyer was in the 90s or the 80s or the 90s.
They did make a live action movie, but it did not do well.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a number of reasons why Disney is just like slowly backing away from Tom Sawyer.
Yeah, the Disneyland one will stay. That one also, that's one of the they say that's the attraction that Walt like personally did drawings and stuff for. Like he designed the cave system in the original park. So it's like they can't tear that one down. Florida, hey, that's all, whatever. We got one in Japan still has ours, but they don't change things out very often in Japan. They tend not to close too many rides. They did just close Buzz Lightyear, but their Autotopia is gone. They've done a little bit, but yeah, they have a lot of like weird stuff. Tomorrowland looks like 1983 still, which is great.
When you say that they won't change it because Walt had original sketches, that actually, I guess I have this unresolved question in my mind, not related to Cars directly, but how much contempt does the Walt Disney Corporation have for Walt Disney the man at this point? Do you think it changes based on CEO? Does it go through waves? Are there some stalwarts high up that are like, no, Walt's visions must be preserved? Because I don't get the feeling that Walt Disney the man's visions have been preserved for the last 2 decades of movies, aside from some of the anomalies that tended to be like the B or C movies. Like it almost seems that there's like a working against what Walt originally liked.
Well, it's like, Michael Eisner wanted to be the next Walt, right? So he was like, let's move on. They're now building a Walt robot, which I think Walt actually said, don't put me in the park, but they're, it's been 50 years. So forget it. He's been dead too long. After you're dead 50 years, your opinion no longer counts.
Right. I'm not, well, validate every religion ever.
What if you went about your life with that thought? I don't know. It might be freeing. We'll see.
This is sort of how Tartarian and old world theories come about.
Yeah. A couple of notes. I'm now at my end of the movie notes. I mean, we're not finished. I'm just want to hit a few things here. When they do show the expressways, are you familiar with it? I think it's the 1938 New York World's Fair Futurama.
Why don't you refresh me?
A ride in 38. It was a GM, I think, and it was a ride, like an early dark ride that would show the future of 1968 or whatever it's supposed to be, and it's showing like how the highway systems are going to work, like in the 30s. You can watch an educational film. I think it's called Two New Horizons, which is great. It's got this creepy music, like on an electric piano, and the guy just intones to you what the future will be like. Traffic moving effortlessly with no stopping through the wildernesses of America. He just goes on like that for like 20 minutes. It's almost like a 1938 ASMR or something.
Or a trance.
It's very trancy. So I do recommend that. That's When I used to really hit educational films, I did an episode for that, and but it's something I'll just watch occasionally. Again, just it's trance-like. So
it sounds like it would work perfect to add as like a little sampled VO for some binaural beats.
You may very well be correct. Actually, you don't even need the binaural beats. The music in that thing is already like, close enough. I mean, it's not binaural, but it's just these, creepy like electric piano organ tones or something like that. Oh yeah, it was fun seeing George Carlin here for a bit. I mean, he gets 3 lines, but
I didn't.
Two
even
of them are
notice
about.
that.
Yeah, he was the hippie car ranting about conspiracy theories.
That was George Carlin. Okay, I knew it wasn't Tommy Chong.
Cheech is in here though.
Right, and that's pretty much why I knew it wasn't Tommy Chong, because I think they were like avoiding each other or something around this time. Maybe not. Maybe I've got the years mixed up a little bit, but okay, that's interesting though. I didn't know that was Carlin.
Yeah. There's I wonder if that was one of his last roles. This is it might be Paul Newman's last role. It says it's in his final voice acting theatrical film role, which makes it sound like maybe he was in a movie. No, this sounds like the last time we got Paul Newman. Yeah. I'm just scrolling down to see if there's any hint of him making something after this. But he's already, 83, so you can retire at that point. Yeah, Road to Perdition and this. Okay, so this is the end of the road for Paul Newman, who did racing. He was a race car driver. What do you know? I guess he had a lot of money. You can have hobbies like that. What Fassbender does that now, doesn't he? I think Hugh Jackman did a race or something. George Carlin died in 2008, I want to say. Do you remember?
I'll have to just go with what you say.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Now I'm just checking if this is a last for him too. That would make cars cursed and for more people, wouldn't it?
Three people so far.
Well, two confirmed. This is his last one too. His next one is Bill and Ted Face the Music, which is posthumous and weird, right? There's something called Happily and Ever After, which also voiced same year. But yeah, Cars is basically the last Carlin as well. Cursed film. Fun to watch, but maybe cursed.
Makes a lot of money. Again, maybe that's part of the formula. Maybe this is part of the Disney formula.
Well, you did notice one of the sponsors was the Hostile Takeover Bank, I imagine. Or maybe you didn't notice that. I don't know.
I did notice that. Yeah, I did.
Okay. The last thing I'm going to put out before we go for a few rabbit holes is I like when he's talking to AJ. He's like, Route 66, it's still here. Because a few years ago I live in Nagano and they had tourism posters that had Nagano, it's still here. I think they meant it's still like it's quiet here, but it just came out like, when it's just written on a poster, it's like, oh, it's still here. It's like we haven't blown up yet. Great.
There's like a billboard. It's like, I'm not dead yet.
Right, that's how the poster read. So that was kind of fun, a little bit of that's fun because usually like the English stuff is like wildly wrong, whereas that one you're like, well, it's not wrong, but the nuance is off, which it's subtly funny,
which is one of the better kinds of funny, I think.
Yes. I guess we've already been like kind of hinting at a few of the weird things we could talk about this movie, but if you want to point your laser pointer at one of them.
Yeah, well, I got a smattering. We can stop and take a little detours here and there. Try to fit in as many car and travel related puns as we can. I wonder if there's a Days of Thunder connection here too, because lightning, and he refers to his guy as Thunder, and Days of Thunder was a huge racing, like American movie phenomenon. This was Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, I think,
right.
90s.
Yeah, that movie I got several years ago. I got like a Blu-ray set with a couple of Tom Cruises. I had Top Gun, Days of Thunder, and I'd never seen Days of Thunder before. It's not good, but it's really fun to watch. It's basically Top Gun again, but like now that it's not like the military, the stakes are stupid.
Right, and it might have been the first topless scene I ever saw. So I've got a special place in my heart for this one.
There we go. What, in Cars? No.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that. There are a few scenes in Cars which that made me lift my eyebrows a little bit.
Right.
So I guess overall, I kind of had this like overarching notes that the movie Cars is a I mean, this is probably super obvious too. This isn't even a deep analysis, but that it's a retelling of American culture that is no longer here. It's like the gone days of America. I would call it death to Americana. That it's completely gone and it's being replaced by these new millennials, these new whippersnappers that weren't even
Love
around
Lightning
in the
McQueen.
50s or 60s, let alone even in the 80s or 90s. So there's a lot of references to all the old way things were, like all the rust. Rust doesn't even really matter to McQueen because McQueen has got a freaking plastic body, and almost all the other cars that he works with all have plastic and probably carbon fiber parts. They're not even worried about rusties, which is weird. It's weird to have this car selling sort of like rust prevention that wouldn't even really worry about rust prevention unless you're talking about the undercarriage or something. But anyways, that's sort of the clear version of this entire movie, and I think they laser focus on also the introduction of that interstate, and they keep harping on the difference between when America used to drive for the fun of it and just had these open highways and had the freedom to just go wherever they wanted to load up on gas, which does seem one of the more uniquely American sort of cultural impacts that makes them unique. I'm not familiar with a lot of other countries that have that same sort of mentality of, in fact, usually America's criticized for this exact mentality of why do you need these big cars and these gas guzzlers and just drive around for no reason, just for, your entertainment. That didn't exist in the same capacity. And America clearly dominated the world auto industry for at least the first half of the 20th century. And then as soon as the muscle car age starts failing, then it completely changes. But it's weird that intersection also happens right around the introduction to all these big interstate programs. Like once the interstates came, now I guess you needed a car that was a little bit more boring. You're just going to drive in a straight line for a way longer amount of time. And also they don't touch on it as much, but clearly it's part of the motif of this movie that the origin of American racing is all about running from cops. It's all about bootlegging and being like a straight up criminal. And all of these things pull at my heartstrings. You know what I mean? Like the wide open road, this American sort of opulence of just burning dinosaur bones. And I know it's not all dinosaur bones. And just running from the cops. Like these, I haven't seen these motifs come up in a Disney movie so specifically before. So it was really cool to get into all that.
Yeah, I guess I'll just contrast the American car culture thing with my experience in Japan. So like in America, I remember now I was using the expressway, but yeah, I was tearing ass up and down I-95 from Georgia to Maine regularly. So, I don't do that here. If I drive for more than 2 hours in Japan, it's like, whoa, this is a trip, man. Like if I go to Tokyo, it's like 100 miles away.
Look
I'm going
at
to take
how
the train.
spread out. So like America is way more spread out compared to even Europe. Because in Europe, sometimes the difference between me going from South Florida to North Florida is not really that much different. But if you were doing that in Europe, you'd probably be crossing a couple, country lines. And the same thing for these interstate trips. It's a completely different feeling, I think, and that's also why public transport is not as viable in so many places in this country, because communities and shopping and all this were intentionally placed way far apart from each other in a way that's not practical now in 2024. That might not be as practical as when they originally were starting a lot of these towns, but it seems uniquely American in maybe an ignorant way.
Yeah, where I live, they're like, "Oh, you need a car," but you don't need a car here. There's a train. I mean, if you want to go to like lots of cool places, maybe not. Another thing with the expressways is you have to pay for them in Japan. So I'm going to Nagano City Sunday, and it's like 30 miles from here, maybe. So I could take the expressway, but then I gotta pay an extra $10. I'll probably just use the surface roads. Be in the morning. I know all the back roads, so I'm not going to be sitting in traffic until I get into the city, because Nagano City traffic is terrible. Yeah. What we have is just get in the cities, and then you're just like it's so much slow, it drives you insane how it's going. But yeah, you got to pay tolls because Japan's mostly mountains and these massive construction projects. Giant concrete bridges, tunnels that are like miles long, like that 30 miles that I would drive to the city. About 10 of those are going to be tunnels if I use the expressway.
Well, speaking of having to pay for expressways and stuff, I guess I got another rhetorical question. Um, when McQueen gets arrested essentially and brought to court and originally dismissed and then undismissed after the whole court case is over, Mater tells him, "Hey, special request. I'd love to have a ride in a helicopter. Oh, but also you owe me $32,000 for legal representation." So clearly there is the concept of currency in this movie. How does that work? Like, how does McQueen actually transfer money from him to Tater?
It's all wireless.
Is that right? But is it just like voice activated? You're just like, hey, I'm logging in now, or do their brains activate some kind of like onboard computer systems?
They all got Neuralinks. Well, they got
Okay,
the newer
so
ones all have computers in the car, right? Because our cars are
if
now
this
run by
takes place
computers.
that much in the future, yeah. Although it doesn't explain all these rusty ass cars and these old dump truck or old towing trucks, that are like in these abandoned towns. Unless that's also just future tech by millennia.
Yeah, maybe our Hornet. What's his name? He's a Hornet. Oh, Doc Hudson is a Hornet. Maybe he didn't have the computer in there because he was raised in 1951, or did they like make him get one later just to function in society?
Right. Well, how would he transfer money? Because apparently money exists. Otherwise, like, why would your legal representation cost money unless money was something that you would need to pay taxes and then therefore use to buy food and rent and all this other stuff? And he's also given a free room at a motel, right? That the
Yeah.
Porsche kind of runs. And it's implied that, like, oh, you can just stay there for free, meaning that there's also a paid option. So again, yeah, I would love to know how money works in this world.
Does Mater make the only money reference? Because I mean, Mater is kind of an idiot. So
Specifically says, he's actually talking about real money. Yeah, because everything else is implied that things cost stuff or that this is free, but he specifically says that'll be $32,000.
right. But I'm just saying, Mater could be making a real dumb joke too,
Right.
because
well, I guess that's another point of this movie is there are, again, maybe I was just in a weird, great mood, but a lot of jokes that actually landed, a few that even made me laugh.
okay, yeah. For me, I was so many questions. I just went in like, this is a question movie for me. Like, not I do again. I like it. I'm just like it's fun to think about how does this make sense logistically. I get stuck on that, but
Well,
that's
if
kind of the
everyone's
charm of the
connected
movie.
to a neural link and that these cars are just the shells containing what used to be human consciousness, but now it's just a more vague sense of consciousness that's flowing through the cars, I guess that answers almost all the questions except for these like petrol-based cars, the ones that are out in the desert that actually need gas. And I guess even McQueen needs gas in order to operate.
Yeah, they killed the electric car for this movie, right?
Thank God.
That was in draft one.
Yeah, again, the description of that first movie would make me hate it. I think this movie I didn't. This one almost was, unapologetically American and nostalgic for this old Americana muscle car sort of mentality, and it had a true hero's journey where the protagonist starts out with some obvious character flaws and then goes through trials and tribulations, and by the end of the movie is exhibiting behaviors of altruism, which is more than I can say about like 99.9 repeating of the other Disney movies we've seen so far.
Right. I guess more character growth. Our early princesses don't seem to have much character growth, for example.
Well, because those were supposed to be stories of warning. Those were like, hey, this is what'll happen to you. So a lot of them were also like, they lightened them up a little bit. A lot of those times it's like, and you'll get murdered, and you get drowned, and you get, fill in the blank here.
Right. Here's what I was thinking of, because we got the old school Americana of Radiator Springs, and if you watch old footage from the 60s of American city life or whatever, do you kind of feel like you're watching like a different world?
I feel that it's all propaganda manufactured, like 100%, because it all was like it was all rehearsed. They didn't really do like real sort of gonzo journalist style reality TV at that point. It was all so yeah. I have a nostalgia that I'm not connected to because I wasn't even born until the mid '80s.
Well, we first started doing this on my podcast where I was doing all those educational films, and one of the appeals for me of educational films was I felt like that was a less filtered, like a unfiltered look, like it's people literally just pointing the camera at what's there, as opposed to Hollywood production and propaganda and publicity and all that. So that for me, that was one of the big charms. You're making these educational films in Lawrence, Kansas, and the world looks different. But the reason I was bringing up is because when I bring up like if I look at footage from Tokyo in the 60s, it looks pretty much like now. The cars are different. That's about the only change. The styles are slightly different. In the case of dudes in business suits, of course, it's not different at all. So
Right,
when I
and
see,
it's a monoculture almost as much as it was back then.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. It's just that's because Radiator Springs is so like different for a modern American, a millennial watching it. But now I'm looking at this Tokyo footage. Once you get back to the 40s, things are looking pretty different. But I was interested, just I found it fascinating that you can go back basically to the 60s and things still look recognizable but yeah, you might have it with the monoculture there.
When also your buildings tend to be either knocked down and maintained, rebuilt, maintained better, or just built longer to last. Whereas a lot of the things that would have been built in the 50s and 60s wouldn't be around as much. That's actually another one of the big differences between the buildings that they were creating in the very early 20th century, which are still around, like 1920s, 1930s, like a lot of that Art Deco type construction. But anything after that, uh, either is not made for as long or it's just very generic looking and tends to get retrofitted. Like the house that I'm in now is a 1958 house.
Right. Yeah, I think the house that
Like my
my
whole
parents still
neighborhood
live
is
in
from the
is,
1950s.
yeah, my parents' neighborhood, same thing there. So I think it might even been like 58. It might be the same. It's just that wild building time because the expressways were being built in great part. Right now, you can just like jam on out to the suburbs in about 15 minutes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, honestly, the entire history of modern Florida is all about who came here first and built the roads. It was an almost an impossible task because it was just swampland filled with all sorts of horrific, natural sort of um, things that were preventing you from making any kind of progress. So all the first people that came here and established road systems are the ones that kind of founded Florida.
That's why Disney World's where it is. It's like, hey, the highways are going to meet here, so let's build it here. And there's quite a bit of that land they cannot use. I mean, people are like, Disney World's gigantic, which it is, but some of that is so swampy you just can't do anything with it.
They'll figure out a way to monetize it at some point.
Yeah, go crocodile hunting or something. Yeehaw.
I've got a list of
alligators.
my favorite jokes in here. If I just wanted to see if any of these landed with you, as much as they landed with me.
Okay, I'm gonna bring up my notes too, just to make sure I could see if I wrote it down.
And I guess for anyone that has seen the movie or hasn't seen the movie, this is a good representation of what I think is better comedy than a lot of the previous Disney movies. So there's a joke about you were talking before, he's got these stickers for headlights because he doesn't need headlights because the racetrack is always lit. And when he says that to someone, he's like, so was my brother. And I just thought that was funny. We're implying that, again, there's like either a drug or an alcohol abuse problem within this family, and we're making light of it. It takes me back to not bread knob, broomsticks and bed knobs.
Bed knobs and broomsticks. Boomsticks. So you've seen Army of Darkness too many times.
Okay. Boomsticks. There's another spot where they put a spotlight on McQueen, and the whole room goes completely silent, and you just hear someone go "Free Bird" in the background, which is just so perfectly on brand for this movie about kind of bootleggers and hillbillies. I don't know. I thought that was absolutely perfect. There was some very like trucker specific jokes where he drives up to a truck, McQueen does, and he's like, "Hey, Mac," and then the truck's like, "I'm not a Mac, I'm a Peterbilt," and he drives off. which is a very specific joke that those are, semi-truck manufacturers in the U.S., Mack and Peterbilt. And I just thought that was kind of ingenious too, that it was the names Peter and Mack. Oh, yeah, maybe I'm just in a rare mood for that. The hippie van, which I now know is George Carlin, which makes it really cool. In his last, I guess, animated or voiceover work of any kind, but he's staring at this traffic light and he's like, "I'm telling you, man, every third blink's a little bit slower." And he does it in this kind of like really stoned out voice that you also know that there's like a drug abuse problem perhaps on this particular character. And he's hanging out with his army Jeep friend who tells him the 60s weren't kind to you, man. So almost getting like a Lieutenant Dan vibe here, or at least these two old war buddies, and one of them was so traumatized by war that the other one is kind of, overcompensating a little bit. I don't know, but another rhetorical question, did this guy see combat? Do you think the VW Bug saw some sort of horrific war crimes?
I know. I had the impression he was just doing too much of whatever cars do in the 60s, like he was playing in a psychedelic band, except how is he going to hold a guitar or play the drums?
Right, well, then they just beep.
Okay. Yeah, they love that.
And he also, that same car, the George Carlin hippie van, I forgot what his actual name was. He actually says at one point,
Fillmore. That one stuck in my head.
Fillmore. Okay. Fillmore says it's all a conspiracy, man. The oil companies, they got a grip on the government, feeding us a bunch of lies, man. And again, I've got a very soft spot in my heart for any Disney movie that specifically and explicitly says that the government is lying to you. It's all a conspiracy. So there have to be kids that grew up and got that drilled into their head, and they don't even know why they have a distrust in the government, but it's because of this particular line.
Of course, still Pixar, right? Pixar is still the cool kids. John Lasseter, cool kid.
Well, again, I'm giving most of my credit to Rand.
Joe. Yeah, for sure.
Let's see, a few other really good ones. The lowrider Ramon, he threatens to blowtorch McQueen, which seems specifically violent, or that also implies pain and perhaps death. So maybe you could, torture one of these cars to death. I don't know. They don't actually show him blowtorching them, but the threat is definitely made.
What is the lifespan of a car? I think for us, it's 15 to 20 years. That's about what you're going to get out of it. Because the car is like a cat.
15, 20 years is usually someone that, if you buy a car new, you can ride it out for about that long until it has so many issues that it's just worth getting a different car. But then there's also someone that comes behind you and buys that 15 or 20-year-old car, and then they make it work. So, I mean, the real lifespan is, I've seen would be way longer than 20 years.
Okay, but 40. My point is that
probably is, yeah. I would say a generation, like a 30 years would probably be a good guess.
The lifespan of a car just seems to be far less than our lifespan, is what I'm saying. So here, I'll throw out one of those insane spit takes I do sometimes. In the Bible, you got people living for 900 years, right? We've got 100. So if the car is in the future, and that's like the future sentient being on the planet, now they're only getting 40. So maybe the monsters in Monsters Inc., which I believe is the furthest one on the weird Pixar timeline people like, the monsters only live for 20 years. That's the dark secret of that movie.
I like that. I like monsters dying quickly.
Get rid of those monsters. Yeah.
There's another joke about, did I forget to wipe my mud flaps, which is obviously a poop joke. So
yeah, I certainly picked that up.
And then there's a few sort of sexual jokes that I kind of liked. One of them is Ramon is talking about he's gone Dutch, Von Dutch style, but then he's on hydraulics and he raises his rear up and he shows off this like undercarriage that's kind of off screen to this minivan. This minivan couple gets lost and they end up in Radiator Springs. And he's like, "Hey man, check out this Von Dutch style." And he goes, "Boop." And the wife's like, "Oh dear," like she's seeing something very. And the husband's like, "Let's get out of here." Like he gets very upset about it. And Von Dutch was basically this like spider web wheel well, like flying eyeballs, that sort of like muscle car aesthetic with the ghost flames and stuff. But apparently I was just assuming that Von Dutch style in this Cars movie also means like a Prince Albert or something.
Yeah, I guess kind of what you're saying though is one thing, especially the perception when this film came out. Like you're saying, oh, here's some jokes for the dads and moms, right? The rest of the movies for the kids, whereas the previous few Pixar seemed a little more like for everybody. I guess that's at least perception wise, you know.
I wasn't even sure what humor was here for maybe all the poop jokes, but I mean they get me too, and I'm in my 40s, so I mean maybe I'm just stunted developmentally. That wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, I don't. Is a 5-year-old going to get the mud flap joke? I don't think so. They're not going to get
I
the
mean,
Von Dutch joke.
I really do think, and they had God, what was the comedian's name? That he wasn't actually a redneck. But he became a redneck for like his stand-up shtick, and he was the voice of Tater, I believe.
Oh, Larry the Cable Guy.
Larry the Cable Guy, yeah, Larry the Cable Guy. So this movie is essentially showing you the death of Americana, the actual death of Americana through the way of the interstate, through the way of these new import cars, and the death of the American car industry. But it's also showing you, like, hey, Disney, I know that we've been like really European based and very, like fairy tale and ancient world, but we know that you hillbillies out there got some money for us too. So here's our chance to court you. Here's our chance to appeal to your particular demographic. We're gonna get all Dale Earnhardt on you. We're gonna get Larry the Cable Guy in here. So I think this was a very strategic move by Disney to really appeal to people that like this Americana kind of approach. I can't think of any other movie that Disney put out up until this one that catered to like the NASCAR, Budweiser sort of crowd.
Yeah. Oh, Michael Keaton's also in here, by the way, as the green porn stashy car, Chick Hicks. This is interesting though. I'm looking that they do put makes and on the wiki page. They have makes and models for most of these cars. Of course, the Radiator Springs cars are all like 40s, 50s.
Well, kind of, except that they've got
Fillmore's, of course,
two
from the early
European
60s.
cars, and they got a Porsche.
Right. They got Ramon. Oh, not Ramon. Excuse me. No, that's right. Luigi and Ramon. 1959 Fiat 500. But then Ramon is a custom 1959 Chevrolet Impala lowrider. Okay. That's how specific this gets, though. Yeah. Lightning McQueen himself not being a specific one, a hybrid between a stock car and a more curvaceous Le Mans endurance race car.
Very curvaceous.
Yeah. And of course, Sally Carrera is a Carrera, right? Porsche 2002 Porsche 911 Carrera.
With a tramp stamp.
Yes. Okay. I noticed the tramp stamp and I thought that was funny.
That was, I mean, honestly, that was hilarious, man. And she even gets embarrassed when McQueen sees it because she's driving away and the camera zooms in on this little pinstripe decal that's like right above the license plate, which I guess is he's staring at her ass. Or does that make the license plate? Where's the butthole? I guess that would be the tailpipe,
lifts
right?
Up and then it lifts. When you see, if you see the license plate lifting up, be worried. About to dump their trunk.
So yeah, there's a tramp stamp joke in the Cars movie. I thought that was pretty awesome. Let's see what else. There's another kind of like oddly like an awkward sexual joke where McQueen rushes to see Doc, and Doc is an actual doctor, and I think he's maybe like in the colonoscopy or something, because he shows up and he's working on the sheriff, and the sheriff is up on a rise. And as soon as McQueen comes into the garage and he's like looking up into the undercarriage. I guess seeing someone's undercarriage is kind of walking into Noah's tent in a way. So he sees the undercarriage, and the sheriff's like, "You getting a good peek, city boy?" I just thought that was absolutely hilarious. And then after he drives away, the doc's like, "I hope you enjoyed the show." Like there's this like deliverance, like sexual, like threatening, like jabs they're throwing at him. I don't know. Again, it felt like uniquely American the way that they were conveying this.
Yeah, maybe it's the little redneck strain that really pushed this one over. So
I've noticed that. I have a bias, like even Fox and the Hound. I think I had a bias towards that movie for the same reason. So my two favorite jokes, the crass one was like wow, he won 3 Piston Cups, and then Mater's like, he did what in that cup? So I thought that one was pretty good. And then my absolute favorite one, which was it was like a deep cut, but the Queen is just like driving around town and he sees this car talking to themselves, or no, he's talking to himself. He's like, oh, I wish you could do better or something. He's doing this like self-critical talk, and this car in the background goes, if you keep talking to yourself, folks will think you're crazy. And he looks over and he's like, yeah, thanks for the tip, kind of being a dick. And then the car's like, I wasn't talking to you, because they were talking to themselves about how they're going. I don't know. I thought that was such a clever joke.
There's a joke. It's a good joke, but there's one that's lost its thing, because when you see someone talking to themselves on the street now, you're like, whatever. You just
I
assume
just assume they have an earpiece in, but even
right. But you don't look crazy
usually
anymore doing that.
Even when I see someone that has the earpiece in, I pretend that they don't and that they're just talking to themselves, because deep down, that's kind of what I think our bodies are doing. Like right now, my body is freaking out because it's like you've been talking to an inanimate object for the last hour. There's something wrong with you.
Oh, you're talking to your laptop. I guess technically that's what we're all doing when we do these.
Yeah, and I think that our physical body and our physical part of our brain knows that there's something really strange with that.
Yeah, I guess it's like auras, right? Even if you don't sense auras, you still sense auras, Because being in a room with someone and on Zoom is definitely a different thing, or StreamYard, as I guess we'll say here.
I got a couple questions for you, I guess, same way, just
Sure.
rhetoricals, but there's a certain part when the beginning of the movie, before McQueen gets lost and ends up in Radiator Springs, he's kind of in one of these car trailers, and he's forcing the car trailer to keep driving even though he's getting tired. So there's like starts swerving and closing his eyes, and you can see him like shaking it off. I think almost anyone that's had to do like a long drive overnight knows this exact feeling. It's like a scary DUI, very adult feeling. Like a kid wouldn't really get this particular thing they're getting at. But anyways, as he's driving, he's kind of dozing off. These 3 Ricer cars and a muscle car is Ricer pejorative in this term? Like if I were to call the car itself like, hey Ricer, that almost seems like a slur to the car. No,
I'm still trying to look up like specifically what they are, but I'm missing it. Maybe they didn't.
It looks like 3 Ricers and a muscle car. But they all clearly have nitrous, except for the muscle car. All the Ricers have tubes of nitrous on the back, and I'm wondering, what is the equivalent of nitrous in this world? Is this methamphetamine? Like,
oh, like these are just like the weirdo heads coming out.
And these are they performance enhancing drugs, or is this just straight meth?
They seem kind of cracked out, I guess. I don't know. Like people whacked out and go out screwing with other people a bit, playing some yacht rock.
Messing with the tractor trailer, calling them a nodder, which almost sounds like they're messing with like a bunch of meth heads messing with a heroin addict.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's kind of like that thing, the people that drive really slow and then you go around and then they start like chasing you down, it's that sort of thing.
But
you flash your lights.
I really loved it. We have road rage in every one of the cities, but yeah, Orlando has been one of the worst road rage cities I've ever lived in. That exact thing where people will get offended if you pass them, even if you're just driving the normal speed limit and they happen to be going slow. Yeah, it's a whole thing. And truckers do it now too, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
My favorite part though about that scene when they find the nodder and they're showing off the nitrous is as soon as they see that he's starting to fall asleep, they start blasting Kenny G at him to make him get even more tired. And I just thought that was kind of genius. I was trying my absolute hardest not to shoehorn mind control into this thing, but I mean, they're clearly weaponizing music in order to do this. And there is a very long lineage of people weaponizing music for psychological operations. And I'm not just talking about Waco and like the dead rabbits squelching, or Guantanamo Bay where they blast Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys at prisoners, but this is another really good example of using a Kenny G to like put you into a trance. I was almost thinking that this was like a Ewan Cameron kind of thing.
I've done it myself, which now feels weird. maybe I've told this story before. I don't know. I used to work at a place called the Whale Camp, and the kids would come for a week or two. And when they come the first day, this sounds horrible now that I'm saying it, but we'd put them blindfolded into a van, and then the other side of the island had cliffs, and we'd sit them near the cliffs, and then say, take the blindfold off. The idea would be like, wow, this is so amazing. And and then you see it all at once, right? Although we were sitting kids by a cliff, but blindfolded, which seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah,
anyway,
I mean, I know you didn't mean it in this way, but that's exactly the orientation when you go to Epstein Island the first time too.
Yeah. And now the part I added in while driving the van, it was just enough. The drive was just the length of Sun Ra's space in the place. So I just blast Sun Ra's space as the place on the drive there.
You do wield a certain amount of power if you have control over the music in a car and a long drive.
That's my point. It's like, okay, this is supposed to be disorienting in the first place, so I'm going to disorient a bit more. This Halloween at my work, we have to take turns sometimes going into the closet, and we've got, black drapes, and we're the ghost. I put on a cloak and stuff, and I tried to up my game a little bit by playing one of my creepier binaural beats on my phone in the background. So when the kids come in, it wasn't just like the dark room and me saying there's a ghost, but I'm like weaponizing the music as well.
The next step is you just make their eardrums bleed. You rupture their eardrums.
Well, I wasn't playing it that loudly. It was to set the mood.
That's why I said that's the next step.
Oh, right. Would you like to know which kids would not go in the ghost room? What kind of kid doesn't go in the ghost room?
What kind of kid doesn't go in the ghost room?
Aggressive 8-year-old boys. They will not. They get scared when it's ghost room time.
Well, because now you're challenging them to actually show what their aggression looks like in the real world and not just in their minds.
So we have a thing, we have a lot of siblings. So it's like the 3-year-old sister's like la 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 into the ghost room, and then the older brother will not do it and starts crying outside of the ghost room.
This could actually be the beginning to a Japanese horror movie.
Yeah, probably.
Called The Ghost Room.
Yeah. I need a, what would that be? Obake. I'm trying to think of how do you put that into Japanese, but I failed. Obake something. You said questions. I guess we have a few more.
Yeah, and I got a couple other just random observations. One is that there's a scene where McQueen thinks that he can beat a train. I don't know if this is a uniquely American thing. This is definitely one of the spots where I've only got one frame of reference. I've been to other countries before, but I don't know about driving on back roads and trying to beat trains. But I know that in America, it's almost a pastime of people to think, well, I can beat that. That train ain't coming that fast. I can get over the. And in fact, in Orlando, there's a website called dayssincesunrailaccident.com. The train in Florida is called the Sunrail that goes across the entire state. And there's an actual website with a counter that shows you how long since the last fatality, because people, even on foot, I don't know how you would think you can outrun a train on foot, or a lot of the time I think it's just drunk people that are walking lateral on the tracks. But anyways, I checked it today and it was at an all-time record 93 days without a fatality. Prior to that, it was 8 days.
Wow.
It usually would get around 20 days and then get reset. But yeah, I guess we're going through a new times now. 93 days before or since somebody was found dead on the tracks.
Around these parts, I mean, the trains are 2 to 5 passenger cars, so there's really no reason to outrun the train because it won't take long.
Well, what about those high-speed trains? I wonder,
there's no crossings for those.
Right? There's not even a place where you would wait for that. So,
right, those do not have road crossings. It's only local trains that do that. Here I'm from Atlanta, where people tell me the driving's worse there now. I don't know. It's been a while, but in Atlanta, I'd say the drivers seem super dangerous. Around here, I actually say that the drivers in my town are fine. People usually, the drivers around here suck. I'm like, they're fine around here. It's the roads that are dangerous. You get on these really crazy little roads. Occasionally I have to hit the button and pull in my side mirrors because I'm hitting the place so narrow. I just need that little extra, space from the mirrors. So if you saw the roads I was driving on, you'd be like, oh my God, why? there's a turn near my house where I'm like, I always see people going up a hill, and I can always turn it without stopping and reversing. So when I'm walking around and I see people stopping and reversing, I feel a sense of accomplishment.
Right, like you are beneath me.
Yeah, you're beneath me. I got this turn down, but it's just a hairpin turn up a hill, So
I mean, that hubris that you're describing of yours, I think, is behind that whole saying of that that you have a higher chance of dying in a car when you're within like a mile of home or something. I'm paraphrasing
that might be the
maybe
case
incorrectly.
Yeah,
but people get so used to thinking like, oh, of course I can do that, and then just one tiny little variable is different, and now you're dead.
I mean, I'm doing the turn at like 2 miles an hour.
Oh,
It's
well,
not...
come on, you could have led with that.
Yeah. So usually you see people, they're doing it at 2 or 3 miles an hour, and then they have to stop and back up and keep doing that. So yeah, this is not a wild mountain road. This is a weird turn up a hill. So the thing we get here, the maters we have you'll see these little white like farm service trucks, which my father-in-law has one because he does farming. But when you see those, you always, oh no, this person's going to be driving like 20 kilometers under a speed limit or something, and you can't, it's really hard to get around people on Japanese roads. Like often there's just no chance to do it. And then if they got the sticker on the back, so new drivers have to put a sticker on their car for a year, which is yellow and green. Old people, once you're 80, you have to put one that's orange and red, I think. But the funny thing is old people don't want to show they're old, so they get the one with all 4 colors, because you can get one with all 4 colors. But you see a little white truck and it's got that sticker on the back, you're in for a bad drive.
Does that change how you drive depending on which of those colors you see in front of you?
It just makes me assume that the person in front of me is going to do something possibly stupid and probably slow, Like I was going up a mountain where I'm going to do this in kilometers an hour.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare. You better do the conversion.
40 is about 28, 30. Okay, 30 miles an hour. Most people are driving 35. This guy was driving 20 or 15 up a mountain. You can't pass him. There's too many turns.
You can nudge him a little bit, I assume.
I was thinking about it. I think I think my wife said that was the most psychotic she's seen me get in the car when that happened. So
I was definitely road rage, huh?
I don't get much road rage, but that time I was like going like that was like bottled up road rage for like 5 years or something probably.
I like that. I don't often get road rage, but when I do, it's against an 80-year-old Japanese man in the mountains.
Yes, exactly. Well, here's the thing. He was also screwing with me because there were a couple times when there was another passing lane, so slow cars can go on the other lane, but he'd just stay in the middle of the road, so you still couldn't pass him.
See that this is honestly a fascinating part of cars to me, that once a person gets inside of this car, it's almost like an exoskeleton. It literally becomes an extension of your body, where you like feel the road and the visibility restrictions. You adopt that as if it's your visibility restrictions while you're in this sort of shell. But also which comes with that is, I think people are like, yeah, I weigh 2 tons, I've got airbags, I can go 100 miles an hour. Like they're thinking that this is their new human form for this. But it also gives this weird sense of power where people that perhaps don't have a lot of power in their normal life, that feel that everyone walks all over them, the second that they start going slow in a fast lane, there's like a power that they can taste almost, where it's like, nuh-uh, you're not passing me. I've got control over everyone behind me. I don't care if you're driving a Porsche or a Hummer, or maybe it's a police car, but anything else, it's like, I run the road. I've got the authority for this stretch until I got to get off at, Starbucks or wherever they're going.
Yeah, that might be what he's doing. Just some old fart. And maybe it was even, like people do get a little snitty towards foreigners sometimes in Japan. Right? So could have been that sort of thing. My wife was with me though. She's Japanese, but whatever. Yeah, that I made more angry.
I assume you're like a perpetual foreigner, regardless of how long you live there or how well you can speak or anything, because of the monoculture, no?
Yeah, correct. My Japanese is not that good, but that's one of the reasons I'm not like totally like incentivized to like really polish up on Japanese. Like, well, they're still going to think I'm an American. So,
well, I hate to break it to you, but deep down, you're always going to be an American.
Right. Right. I can't prove it at the moment, though. I have to get a new passport. I can't find my passport.
I do have another rhetorical question that I'm happy for you to answer for us to discuss. And this is another one of those like weird logistical things. But when McQueen ends up in Radiator Springs, he destroys the roads, right? And the sequence is actually, I really like the sequence. I think it does have all sorts of symbolism in it. It might not be Aleister Crowley summoning demons levels of symbolism, but it actually follows like some very specific rules that make it add depth to it. So, for example, he comes into the town and he's driving too fast. The whole thing is that he's always driving way too fast, and that's the cause of pretty much all of his issues. And as he's driving around this town too fast, he knocks down all the cans of the gas station. Then he gets wrapped up in this barbed wire, which sounds like this is the part that comes from Michael J. Fox, a lot of it. He gets that barbed wire wrapped around the town's founder's statue. He rips that off, and as he's driving around, trailing this big metal statue connected to him with the barbed wire, it's tearing up the roads. It's just completely destroying all the roads. So after he does this, this is why they say we're going to keep him here and make him repave the roads as punishment, where he finds himself pulling Bessie, which is the gravel paver, right? And as soon as he's done with the gravel paver, after he does a good job on it, everyone there is like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I love driving on these roads now. This town looks, like it's actually being reinvigorated. Why the hell did they wait for some random guy to come into the town that they could force into like indentured servitude to pave the roads when Bessie was right there? Like, what were they doing for the last 40 years in this town that no one even was like, hey, I'll pull it for an inch today? And if they just did that for a year, they would have paved all their roads already. So I'm thinking too deeply into this, I realize, but why did they wait?
They're lazy.
Okay, the end. Yeah.
I actually did. I wrote a Crowley note in here.
Real? Okay. What's the Crowley note?
Because Mater's like, you gotta learn to drive backwards, and that's like how he weaponized that. And I was like, well, Crowley said you have to learn to read backwards. He was like, you should do things backwards. So
I thought this was gonna be another butt sex joke.
Oh well, yeah, some more tailpipes.
No. Yeah, you got to learn to do everything backwards. Yeah,
which I'm actually very good at reading backwards. So,
but that's because very Crowleyan of you.
It is. Well, the reason being is teaching. I'm often at a table, the students on the other side, and I'm looking at their paper, right? So I have to read it upside down. I guess that's different than backwards, isn't it? Also, I'm very good at reading upside down. I gotta say that.
the very last scene too, I really do like how the movie ended. It showed the altruism thing, but he could have just driven for not even a second more and would have won the race, and then could have looped back around and went and checked out the king, the guy that gets pushed off the track. But instead, he just he stops short, waits for the other guy to pass him, keeps sitting there for another 10 seconds, and then goes around to him. I just don't understand. Was he just sort of like virtue signaling really hard? Like, I'm going to not even do the race.
Well, he worked
and then pushed the guy over.
Because Michael Keaton starts gloating and everyone's like screaming at him. So it worked for the plot for sure. Virtue signaling, sure. He weaponized it a little by sitting there for 10 seconds.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah, that's and he kind of rubbed the altruism in Michael Keaton's face in a way, right? Which is the best kind of altruism, is the kind that you rub in people's faces. But because he clearly would have won the race, but then instead comes up last. He ends up, being third in line because he pushes the king in front of him, who ends up coming in second, I guess, as a technicality.
Oh yeah, there are no other cars in that race. It's just the three. Okay,
it's the three of them because it's the tiebreaker. And
right.
And it made me think: isn't this also how Willy Wonka, or how Charlie gets Willy Wonka's factory, is by sort of withdrawing from the race? And that's really what Willy Wonka was looking for all along, because that's also the premise. I think at a certain point he also realized maybe this is strategic on McQueen's part, right? Because McQueen at this point realizes he doesn't care about the Piston Cup. Why would you do that with a cup? But he doesn't care about the cup, and because it's this empty cup, unless it has the piston in it. But what he does care about is getting that sweet ass helicopter and that sweet ass endorsement deal that King has. So strategically, he forfeits the cup and then kind of gets Willy Wonka's factory.
Yeah, they're both sociopaths. Well, I don't know. Willy Wonka for sure. I mean, that's the whole charm of Willy Wonka. But I guess I don't know if McQueen's quite that far. But I mean, he's a public figure. Even if he seems a little
Charlie
derpy,
in this case.
Yeah, well, he knows some of this stuff. Yeah. What is the Texas car? The Texas oil car. I guess he's the. He wouldn't be the Wonka though, would he?
Yeah, because he's the one that's endorsed by Dynacorp.
Yeah,
Dynacorp is the oil company. And they're the ones that have all the cool money, that all the cars are trying to like be them because they've got all the coolest toys around.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he says no to the endorsement. He says yes to the helicopter. So yeah.
Right, and which is kind of like the elevator at the end of Charlie's Chocolate Factory.
Charlie gets the factory though. Isn't that isn't the sequel book them living or?
Well, I mean, I was maybe it just would have been too in depth, but I was almost expecting the Dynacorp to be like, well, you know what? We just purchased, we just did a corporate takeover of
a hostile takeover.
So now you do, like, Rusty's is Dynacorp. Congratulations. Welcome to the family. You're fired.
Yeah. Well, we got 2 sequels. We'll see what happens. Do you have any more questions or observations you wanted to put on there? I think I've pretty much rattled through most of my notes by now.
Yeah, I think I've hit the end of this road.
Okay, I hit the brakes then. It's mid-December, I guess. What up?
What is up? Well, the Illuminati comic is, I don't know when you guys are listening to this, but if it's before December 11th, you've still got a chance to go to IlluminatiComic.com and grab one of the different reward packs. It starts at $5 for a digital version, $9 for a printed, and then they kind of go up from there based on all the cool extras that you get. And one of the really awesome things here is that the campaign's been doing so phenomenally well that everyone that does any of the printed packs, the $9 or up packs, are already getting an extra $15 worth of stickers and art prints and just all kinds of bonuses. And then anyone that gets the VIP packs, which I think start at like $129, those are already getting like $60 worth of extra stuff added to them because of all the huge milestones and stretch goals that this has been hitting. So by far the most successful, most anticipated Paranoid American comic book to date. And I'm really proud of this one. It's been a work of at least 2 years between me and Donut, but collectively it's like 40 years of research and obsession. So we absolutely put everything that we could have into this. So that's my ultimate pitch, to go and check out IlluminatiComic.com.
Right on. What am I up to? I mentioned the music I used to scare children with. That's down here at rovingsagemmedia.bandcamp.com. I make too much music for some reason. All the podcasting I do is now over at podcastius.org. That will send you to a variety of shows that me and my friends do. The ones I do are the more film and TV related ones. And I'm usually not on the video game ones. Although I was recently on the game show twice. I won one. I won one round. The other one I lost, and I had a point taken away from me for a reason I don't remember. Well, it was my father-in-law's birthday party, so I had a couple drinks. I'm walking around, and can you come in and do the game show now? So I came in as like the Dean Martin of that particular one,
Nice.
Okay, driving off. We'll drive over to the Robinsons' house and meet them next week then.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlight your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper, the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it, your favorite. Of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.